Hello, my name is Lori Norton. I'm the IPS Support Employment Project Director with the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute, and I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about IPS Supported Employment. And the title of my presentation is, A Label Does Not Define Me or Who I Am Meant to Be. So what is IPS? IPS stands for Individual, Placement, and Support. So an employment specialist works with an individual and helps them to place them in the type of job of their choosing and provides ongoing support. IPS. Who do we serve? We serve people with serious mental illness and or substance use. Some of the characteristics or features of IPS are that it is an evidence-based practice. It's been put through rigorous research and proven that if you use this model, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to get a job than any other vocational service. It also really focuses in on client strengths. So looking at what does the person do well and how can we build on that. One of the biggest hallmarks of IPS is the team approach. So the employment specialist is working together with the team of mental health practitioners such as therapists, case managers, peer support, voc rehab counselors, and anybody else that's involved in that person's life so that all can be on the same page and help that person to get to where they want to be. Services are individualized and tailored to each person, and they're ongoing, long-lasting. And that's the piece that makes support employment so unique. It's not just assisting that person with getting a job, but it's providing those ongoing supports for that person to keep and maintain that job or move into another career. It also has a fidelity scale, which is a quality improvement tool, and really the provider's roadmap for services that measure the key ingredients of the evidence-based support employment practice. So why in the world do we need this model? Why do we need IPS? Well, did you know that at least 70% of people with serious mental illness say that they want to work, yet less than 15% are actually working? And in Kentucky, back in 2009, before we wrote for a grant to bring the IPS model to Kentucky, there was a survey done to look at how many people that were receiving services through the local community mental health centers were actually employed with mental illness. And that number was only 9.65% at the time. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of work. And why is work so important? You know, work is really a central theme in a person's recovery. And I heard someone was asked a question one time is, what does recovery mean to you? And that person shared that it means getting my life back. And I thought that said a lot. And work is a big part of getting your life back. And thinking about some benefits of work and think for yourself, you know, what are some benefits for you when you go to work? Is it that you have a sense of purpose or something to look forward to every day? Is it hope? I have that in capital letters here on this presentation because to be such a small word, it has such a huge impact. We have to have hope. Other benefits of working, it really helps, you know, increase our self-esteem or gives us confidence. It's an identity. It's what all of us typically do. It's a role in society. It's also a place where when we go to work, we'll meet some of our best friends. It's a social aspect as well. And then also being able to make some money to be able to buy the things that we want or need is also a benefit of working. Another benefit of work can also be, it can also help reduce substance use or give people an alternative or a diversion to what they're already doing. Pat Deegan once said, what most people want is a job, a car, and a date on a Friday night. And I think that's so important. I think that's what we all want out of life. And as you see on her quote, the very first thing that's on there is that wanting a job. Also, Joe Maroney, an IPS trainer, one time said, and I love this quote, if you think work is stressful, you should try unemployment. And I think back during COVID, you know, if anything good came out of that, it was that there was more discussion and more talk about mental health and people going to work and the importance of having somewhere to go and how that really does affect our mental health. The research shows that when people work, there are improvements in people's finances, of course, but also in a person's self-confidence and self-esteem. Also, improvements can occur in a person's symptoms. We worked with somebody one time who has schizophrenia, and she said it really helps her not to hear the voices as loud if she was staying busy and having a job. Also, consumers or clients do not express any more severe symptoms or higher levels of stress or require more hospitalizations when they go to work. In fact, the opposite is true. So, supported employment works, pun intended. So, let's think a little bit about the philosophy of supported employment and what does that really mean? It means the belief, in capital letters, the belief that regardless of disability, everyone can work. And I believe that from my head to my toes right out this door. I believe everyone can work. And the primary goal is not about changing or fixing people, but it's really looking to find a natural fit between the person's strengths and experiences and jobs in the community. So let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the 8 core principles of IPS that really drive this model. The first one being eligibility is based on client choice, and you might also hear this referred to as zero exclusion. I love this principle. Of course, I love them all, but I love this one because it means that no one is excluded from going to work or having the opportunity to work with IPS. So people aren't excluded on the basis of any job readiness factors, or if people have maybe been involved and have justice involvement, or may still be having symptoms with their mental health, maybe still using substances, or maybe not taking medications as prescribed. It really looks at work can also really be a treatment, if you think about it. It gives people an alternative. It's the employment specialist has that treatment team that they work with, that they can all work with the person to say, how can we help Johnny to be sober when he goes to work Monday morning? Or maybe the work is the reason for people to either curb the habit or to stop it altogether. So every person is encouraged to think about work. Employment services and mental health services are integrated. So each employment specialist is a full member of a mental health treatment team from which they attend on a weekly basis. It allows time for the employment specialist and other team members such as therapists, case managers, peer supports, prescribers to come together to celebrate successes, to talk about if there's any maybe some coping strategies that work for people. For example, if something is a trigger to the person having panic attacks or anxiety, what kind of strategies are they working with? What's the therapist doing? What kind of strategies are they utilizing with the person that we might be able to help with during work? Also sharing things that we've learned or medication side effects or anything that pertains to employment. The employment specialist is also co-located with the rest of the treatment team so that allows for that informal communication to go on. If maybe the therapist or case manager or somebody sees that employment specialist in the office, they could say, hey, I have somebody that's interested in a job. Would you be able to meet with them and come on down and talk with them? It also allows them to say, hey, I saw Susie the other day and she was a little worried about her check. So that allows that to happen if they're in the same office location. It also helps for that employment specialist to be a part of that team, embedded within that team, so that everyone is on the same page and we're all sharing that same hopeful message of helping that person to get to where they want to be. Having that employment specialist there as a part of the team also helps with bringing up the idea of work for people that maybe the team hadn't thought of before. Competitive jobs. With IPS, we believe in people should go to work and work in competitive jobs. So that's any job, it's like the rest of us apply for out in the community. It could be minimum wage or above. The person might want to work part-time or full-time, but they should be getting paid the same amount as their peers. So it's not volunteer work or anything like that. We believe that people should get paid for what they do. And also every job is looked at as a positive learning experience. Next principle is the job search occurs rapidly. So need for speed. We heard a VR counselor say this one time, and I loved it because it reminds me of the old Top Gun movie or Maverick. Need for speed, very important to strike while the iron's hot. It's important for that employment specialist to, as soon as they meet that person program entry, typically within 30 days, they are out talking to employers, or maybe they may be going together. It allows the person to know that we are really honoring their preferences and getting out there and hitting the ground and striking while the iron's hot. Targeted job development. Each employment specialist meet with employers out in the community, at least 6 face-to-face contacts, to develop those ongoing relationships, as well as finding out what are the preferences of that employer. So the employment specialist spends time with the person, the client that they're working with, to find out about what are their characteristics in a good job fit, what works for them, what are their preferences, and then they go out to local employers driven by the individual's interest to learn more about what are their preferences, and then to bring the two together. Client preferences are honored. So thinking about preferences of the clients and thinking about what type of career is a good fit for the person. Not only the type of job, task, or career, but what type of people, what type of supervisor works best for them? What type of coworkers do they enjoy being around? What's the location? Some people want a job close to where they live because they may not have transportation and they need to walk to a job. Preferences is also as far as how do they want their services provided, as far as disclosure. Some people may choose that they want to disclose to the potential employer. Some people choose that they do not want to do that, and the employment specialist may be providing supports in the background. Job supports are continuous. So with IPS, it's not just about assisting that person with getting the job and then it's over. The job supports piece is once the person starts the job, this is the piece that makes supporter employment so unique. It's that ongoing, individualized supports in whatever that's going to look like for each person. So the IPS employment specialists help people with job changes, with career advancement, talking with people about career advancement. Maybe someone's working part-time and we have discussions with them about working full-time. The whole goal is to help that person to become as independent as possible while providing support as needed. Some people may want that employment specialist to talk with the employer to get feedback, and some people may not. Again, it's all individualized and tailored to each person. And then once that person has worked for a year or more, and again, this is very individualized, the employment specialist can talk with the person about transitioning off the caseload, which would allow them to bring another new person on, but they would still have support from the rest of the treatment team that's still involved in their life. And if someone wanted another job or a career advancement beyond that point, or they lost their job for whatever reason, they would go back to that employment specialist for that assistance. Benefits counseling. Oh, wow. This is one of the biggest fears to going to work, has been since I started in 1992, is what's going to happen to my check if I get a job. So all people, every person in IPS, and this is another one of the main principles, receives benefits counseling from a trained benefits counselor. And again, this person can meet with them or talk with them over the phone to really look at their individual situation. So talking with the person about how work might or might not affect their check, and sometimes it may not even be as much about their check as it is what might happen to my Medicaid or my Medicare that I need to pay for my medicines, my doctor's appointments. Also, how might work affect or not affect my housing subsidies if I receive them, or food stamps, and getting all the information they need to make an informed decision for themselves. So who provides all of these services? What's the structure of the program look like? So the IPS supported employment is provided by a vocational unit that typically would include an IPS supervisor, which could be full-time or part-time or prorated, depending on the number of employment specialists they have, and at least 2 or more employment specialists. And we have some agencies that only have 2 employment specialists, and we have some providers that have had as much as 13 employment specialists to work. And they serve youth and young adults of all ages. So each client, each person works one-on-one with an individual employment specialist. So just to highlight some of the unique features about IPS supported employment, employment specialists work with people with serious mental illness and or substance use. The job starts soon after the person expresses interest in working. Remember that need for speed. So typically within 30 days of program entry, when that employment specialist is spending time getting to know the person and what a good job fit is. So typically within 30 days, they're out talking to employers on that person's behalf. Each employment specialist works with at least 20 or fewer people at a time. And the research has shown that this is a good number of people to be able to work with at a time in order to give those proactive services of really spending that time with the person, going out and learning about employer preferences and all of the other duties that employment specialist has. They spend at least 65% of their time out in the community every week. Another feature, and I talked earlier about the hallmark of IPS and being a part of that treatment team, employment specialists are full members of the mental health treatment team and work together to share that hopeful message for each person that they're working with. Another feature of IPS is that transition supports or step-down supports once the person works for a year or more and everything's going well at the job. The employment specialist can talk with them about transitioning off the caseload, which is a good thing when that person is doing well. But if for whatever reason they want another job, career advancement, lost their job for whatever reason, they would come back to that employment specialist for that. And it also, again, has that fidelity scale. So the fidelity scale is kind of like that commercial, the Fidelity commercial. It's their roadmap for services. And if you follow this and follow the fidelity scale, then more people are going to go to work. Now let's shake it up a little bit and talk about some fun facts of IPS support employment. Kentucky was actually the 12th state to receive a grant from the International IPS Center to start IPS here in Kentucky in 2010. Hard to believe it's been that long. It's gone fast. And now there are, I believe, 26 or 27 states that are a part of the International Collaborative, as well as other countries such as Italy and Spain and Netherlands. So I think it's important to note that we are a part of something bigger than even just us in Kentucky, and all working together to help more people go to work. When we started IPS in Kentucky in 2010, we started with 4 sites, 4 community mental health centers across the state. And the reason we started with the community mental health centers across the state is that they already had the structure of that treatment team embedded within them that were meeting on a regular basis so that employment specialists could be a part of those. Now we have 25 sites that are across the state, which 3 of those are actually specifically serving youth in their IPS program. We've also stepped out in implementing IPS for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have 2 programs here in Kentucky that we just started with last year as a part of our IPS expansion to look at implementing IPS with this population to see what it's going to look like. Counties served. When we first started IPS in Kentucky, we started out in 6 counties across the state. And I did not realize when I was going to all the different places, we have 120 counties in the state. And now we are up to 75. And the goal is to continue to grow and to be in every county so that anyone that wants to work should have the opportunity to do so. Since 2010 through June of 2023, last year, we have served a total of 25,903 people. And these are not just numbers. When you look at that, that's people that we've been able to touch or that have heard about work or gone to work or, really made a difference in their life. Also, since we've been a part of IPS since 2010, Kentucky has received 6 international awards since we began a part of the IPS Collaborative, which we're really proud of. Our providers. Our NAMI Family Advocacy team also won one of those awards as well. So just to show you a little bit about what it looked like when we started in 2010 with those 6 counties and where they were to where we are now with our most up-to-date map of services now in our Kentucky map as of January 2024. And as you can see, we've started to color in the map and having more services, but there's also some areas that we still need to get to so that we can ensure that all people know about IPS and about going to work and the benefit of that and the difference it can make in their lives. So we're continuing to look at where we don't have services and how can we continue to expand into those areas as well. Just wanted to share a picture of someone who started working and the smile on her face, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And just some of the different jobs that people have. We have someone who actually is an associate computer programmer. We have people who have started their own business. We had someone who started their own marble top candy shop. We've had someone interested in self-employment and doing artwork, security guard, truck driver, youth care worker, just to show that all the different types of work and the diversity in jobs, and that it's always following the person's individual preferences. So in summary, just to highlight, people with serious mental illness and or substance use can and do want to work. IPS is a successful employment intervention for a wide variety of population. So when we started back in 2010, and most of the research has really been driven by working with people with serious mental illness and co-occurring substance use, but we have stepped out in Kentucky just to serve people who may have substance use as well. It's been also tried as an intervention with other populations, just like we're doing here in Kentucky for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Also, IPS is an evidence-based practice. So rather than saying, hey, let's just give this a try and see if it works, it's been proven to work over and over again. And it includes program manuals and that IPS fidelity scale that I mentioned earlier to serve as a roadmap for good program implementation. So just some ending points or things that are the most important to think about. Just some quotes from some people that have gone to work. Since I started working, I'm so grateful I can make sure my son has everything he needs and wants. And here's this word again. There is hope. It takes dedication and effort, but change is possible. Despite the many obstacles, I am living proof of that. And this last quote has really stuck with me when I heard the person say it, and just the power of work. Work saved my life. I mean, that's powerful to think about. And I think about this a lot. Work is so much more than just a job. It has a ripple effect, not only for that person, most importantly, but all the people's lives that they touch, including their family members, their son, that the person mentioned, employers. But that's very powerful to think about how important work is for people. So as I told you in the beginning, the title of my presentation is A Label Does Not Define Me or Who I Am Meant to Be. And I've thought a lot about labels over the years. I started out in 1992 as an employment specialist myself, and I've been in many meetings where people have been defined by certain labels that they may have. And so I talked with my boss and my great mentor one time, and she told me something I've kept with me over the years. And she said, Lori, just remember that labels are for soup cans. And I started really thinking about that, and I thought to myself the analogy of if I had a can of chicken noodle soup and I took that label off of there, I'd have to look inside to see what's in there. It's the same thing with people. Always, we've got to look inside. And so I wrote a little poem that I wanted to leave you with to talk about labels. A label does not define me or who I am meant to be. Even though I might feel blue, work gives me something to look forward to. Sometime I need you to be there. All the time I need to know you care. Even though I've been through strife, I need to have the power of work in my life. I never knew all I could be until you, each of you, saw something in me. Even when I'm feeling at my worst, I'm always a person first. A label does not define me or who I am meant to be. For more information about IPS, please go to their website at ipsworks.org, or feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy and love to share the good news with you about IPS. And here's my contact information. And also, just to leave you with, you may have noticed that on my slide deck, I use the word people on my presentation slide. And I keep that on there as a reminder to myself. And no matter what service we provide or no matter what service we receive, that it's always, always about people first. So thank you for your time. Please reach out and have a great day.